I've always been a huge fan of the kind of logistics style games. And one of the issues has always been the kind of focus on both combat and the management or the assembly line kind of challenge. So it's been a delight checking out Dyson Sphere Program. And please keep in mind that the footage you're seeing is taken during its early access and may not represent the current version of it. But following in the footsteps of course, the hit game Factorio, Dyson Sphere has a very basic idea. You are going to build assembly lines. A whole lot of assembly lines across the planet. As the name implies, your goal is to construct a Dyson Sphere, get all that lovely energy, and get all the endorphins you need out of the rush of watching things move from conveyor belt to conveyor belt. So, for those of you who haven't played Factorio, this is a game that's all about the construction of goods and getting them to where they need to be. Essentially, make a thing to send it to another thing. Objects are constructed at either smelters or replicators, which can then be sent to other areas. Now, progression in this game, similar to Factorio, is built on those research cubes, or Factorio uses potions. You can see them on the left-hand side of the screen, and you're going to have to manufacture them out of an ever-growing number of different products and chains needed to get them going. Now, from a UI standpoint, just general aesthetics, Dyson Sphere definitely has a leg up. I would say probably next to something like Satisfactory. This is probably one of the better looking examples of this kind of design, unless we really want to bring in something like Anno or the Anno series in, and then that just muddies the whole thing up. But you can set up sorters and set things to either grab or send objects based on what gets put into them. You can have construction set to construct other constructors and things along those lines. Now, the one area where Dyson Sphere tries to innovate and I think stand out from the crowd is what happens when you get into the mid-game. In other kind of logistic-based games, you are stuck on your singular planet. And as you go higher up in tech, new production chains are introduced, new machinery is put in. Factorio, of course, has the introductions of electricity, oil, I think there's nuclear power, the survival aspects, etc. Dyson Sphere goes in a different direction, quite literally, and introduces the idea of a multi-universe spanning galactic assembly line. As every planet and every system will have different resources and varying amounts of said resources. And as you enter the mid-game, your goal will become to explore your starting solar system to gather additional resources into the end game or late game where you'll be exploring the entire universe. This is achieved by using or getting better amounts of fuel, as well as warp engines or warp fuel that will let you travel to other systems. Now, this is quite ingenious, at least in the basic form that's in now. How it works is that many of the advanced resource items or advanced resource goods have secondary materials that are rarer that you can find in the universe that can circumvent or speed up this production. So let's say an advanced item may need 4 different production chains before you get the goods needed to make that one. You could get a resource that cuts that down to 1 or 2. Not only saving you on the resource in the long run, but making it far more reliable and easier to produce. And this basically comes to a head when it's time to start constructing the Dyson Sphere, which you'll need to set up materials and factories in a solar system in order to then begin the very, and I do mean very lengthy project of getting this constructed. And one of the big things that happens in the mid-game is the introduction of logistics towers, which are used to set up the transfer of goods from tower to tower, and later on, planet to planet and galaxy to galaxy. And the beauty about this, and what kind of separates this from Factorio, is that once you get this set up how you like it, basically everything runs itself, provided you feed it resources. So I spent like 3 hours completely reconstructing all my starting assembly lines, and now basically everything runs as long as resources come in. I don't need to manage a damn thing. And if you're a fan of logistics style games, that's kind of one of the lofty goals you're trying to achieve. Now again, with Dyson Sphere being in early access, it is already on a very strong foot forward. But with that said, I do have some nitpicks and possible potential things I want to see in the future, and we're going to talk about that next after this quick word, as well as where this game stacks compared to Factorio. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. So the big question I'm sure everyone is asking, what is the better logistics game, Factorio or Dyson Sphere? And it's a very interesting question. I think gets at the heart of what makes these two games different and where I want to see Dyson Sphere go in the future. So while I'm busy making this giant silicon farm, let's have a little talk. Factorio, I would say at the moment, is the deeper game. One part because of the survival aspects with combat and just the general focus on defense as well. If you like that secondary system of combat or survival sim or whatever, Dyson Sphere does not have that, at least not in this iteration of it. I don't know if they're going to do more with it in the future. If you don't like that stuff, you're like me and you prefer kind of just the pure logistics side, then Dyson Sphere is a great game, but it still feels limited in my opinion. One of the big things about this kind of progression curve is that as new things are introduced, or new chains, you need to give the player new elements to work with, new rules, new challenges. Factorio does that with the introduction of electricity, the survival aspects, oil, creating chemicals, etc. In Dyson Sphere, really it comes down to either replicators or chemical plants as your primary kind of building or your constructions. Other structures are kind of the middleman of refining the goods needed and be fully constructed. And I want to see kind of a larger or more growth. Essentially at this moment in Dyson Sphere Program, your limitations are going to be power and how you get resources moved and produced, like with all these games. And I would like to see more solutions or more ways to get around it. They go for scale, but they don't go for depth. And again, that's where Dyson Sphere Program kind of exceeds Factorio in the sense of scale. But it doesn't have, I think, the depth in order to match it. And a big point about that is the universe. While there are multiple star systems and planet types, they don't change the rules. They're not really biomes in the same way as something like Anno 1800 or 2205 did. So an ice planet is going to operate the same way as a lava planet, which is going to operate the same way as a desert planet. Yes, they may have slight differences in terms of what form of power works better, or again, how easy it is to get to them, but I'm still going to be building tons and tons of smelters and replicators and needing ships and doing all that. And at some point, the game just simply devolves into, I'm just setting up outposts and that's it. Everything else is being run for me. There's no greater sense of depth or complexity. Now granted, that still took several dozen hours to get to that point. But when you compare it to Factorio, which I know there are people with hundreds, if not thousands of hours of still figuring things out, it does feel kind of limited. Now again, this is still in early access, and as it stands right now, as version 1 on early access, this is still an amazing game. And there is so much potential to see things grow and expand from here. And I'm really interested to see what the developers do with kind of the first major content or gameplay patch, because that's something that a lot of people are waiting around for, to see kind of how they pivot or adjust considering the success of this game or the breakout success on Steam. So with all that said, if you have not played any logistics style games and are looking for like the right one to start with, Dyson Sphere Program is probably the most forgiving of the big names out on the market. It's not the deepest one, as I said. If you want the gold standard in that aspect, then you're probably looking at Factorio, and maybe by like a close second or third, Anno 1800. But for people who've been enjoying this one like I have, or really enjoy Factorio, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will certainly be keeping both my eyes on this game going forward to see how things go, and if I want to restart again and build all my lovely assembly lines from scratch. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video. As always, check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and if you let me take a look at your game in the future, please get in touch. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.